We're living today, I think you know, through a mental health crisis where this meaning and signification, the meaning of someone's life, has been called into question. You know, they say that a personal crisis begins when the story you tell yourself about yourself is no longer convincing, because we are storytelling creatures, and so much of how we make sense of the world and orient ourselves in the world is through that inner compass, that interpretive framework, whether it's Joseph Campbell's mythological hero structure, where we're a hero on a quest and we're gonna grow up to be a man, or we're gonna achieve a great thing and slay some dragon and bring some wisdom back to the village, because after the ecstasy, the laundry, and its maturity, and it's an interpretive framework that informs our life with meaning, and so on and so forth. So the problem with mental health crises, the problem with the fact that today more people are dying by suicide than are dying from natural disasters and armed conflict combined, according to the World Health Organization, is that people's inner storytelling has hit a crisis point. There's this negatively preconfigured inflection point where people have lost the plot. They've lost the through line. They don't see a reason to get out of bed in the morning. The world has gone off the rails. There's a sense-making crisis exacerbated by social media. There's a feeling of alienation and disconnection. There's a meaning crisis, an epistemic crisis. And so people are losing their shit. And their inner chatter, their self-defeating thought patterns have hijacked them. There's a kind of micro-stressor permanent state of being where people are just increasingly anxious. Jamie Wheel says they're stuck in cul-de-sacs and error messages, and all the diseases of despair, whether it's the depression or anxiety or PTSD or OCD, they're all stemming from the same thing. Turns out the default mode network, the storytelling center of the brain, the seat of the soul, the ego, it turns out that when we're in a meaning crisis and when we've lost our way, that can be seen in fMRI scans. There's an overdetermined, an overdeveloped default mode network, a kind of tightening, a kind of gnawing, self-defeating thought pattern fueled haze. People are stuck in the rut. It's like skiing down the same ski routes because the routes are they're footprinted. They're like cemented. You know, it's the grooves. We're stuck in these grooves. We're stuck in these patterns. And it turns out that dissolving these patterns seems to be the means to transcend them. We have to die so that we can be reborn. And the power of psychedelics and psychoactivism in carefully controlled environments with therapists in the room and carefully screened patients is that we can evoke a kind of mystical experience, one that meets the William James questionnaire. People have an experience of the ineffable. They have an experience of transcendental bliss. They have an experience of obliteration. They have an experience of death and resurrection. They have an experience that brings them back to life. It recontextualizes the self into a marvelous conduit in a timeless whole from which molecules and meanings flow from neurons to nebula and back again, as Tim Doody wrote. And it turns out we need that because we are creatures of imagination, creatures of story, and creatures of meaning. And so we need meaning, we need story, we need an inner mythic life that has a bleed-through effect into our biographical life, that informs it so that we feel a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives. We can live and we can love and experience passion and direction and lean into our dreams. But we need that. And it seems like these transhuman technologies, these psychedelics, they seem to make it happen. We're seeing results in clinical trials showing that people have one or two of these mystical experience psychedelic sessions. They no longer meet the criteria for PTSD, for trauma, for anxiety, for depression. They're brought back to life through what Chris Lethaby calls knowledge by acquaintance. That's how they work. Because when you're in the throngs of despair, knowledge by description simply will not do. You've got to go there to know there. And that's what psychedelics do. Psychologically speaking, they pick you up, they hoist you by your feet and hang you over the volcanoes of Iceland, and you can suddenly see the world inside out and upside down, and all becomes clear. The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And finally, through knowledge by acquaintance, you become directly acquainted, somatically and cognitively. An experience of visionary understanding, but also an experience of embodied cognition, because you went there and now you know there. You've had the flash of revelation, the opiated adjacency, and you've been brought back to life. And it turns out, 1 or 2 sessions, people are cured. The diseases that are taking more lives by suicide than natural disasters or armed conflict combined, cured thanks to psychedelics. I would say this at least merits a little more investigation, a little more decriminalization, a little more legalization, and a little more inquiry. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this.